At 11:47 p.m. on September 12, 1958, Big Sam's hand trembled as he tightened his grip around the handle of a pistol. $50,000. That was the price the five families had placed on Bumpy Johnson's head. And Sam, Bumpy's bodyguard for 5 years, the man Bumpy called a brother, had taken the contract. The plan was simple. Walk into Lenox's Lounge. Wait until Bumpy was distracted. One shot to the back of the neck, then disappear into the night. Sam stepped inside. Bumpy was seated at the table, his back turned, completely exposed. Sam pulled the gun and squeezed the trigger. Nothing happened. The room fell silent. Slowly, Bumpy turned around, stared directly into Sam's eyes, and spoke 5 words that would become legend. I trusted you. What no one in that room knew, what history books would never tell you, was that Bumpy Johnson had known about the assassination attempt for 3 weeks. And what he chose to do during those 3 weeks didn't just save his life. It permanently changed the rules of power in Harlem. To understand what really happened that night at Lenox Lounge, you first need to understand who Bumpy Johnson truly was. And why would Bumpy allow it to happen? By 1958, he was no ordinary gangster. Bumpy Johnson was the man holding Harlem together. By the late 1950s, pressure was building. The Italian Mafia, specifically, the 5 families had spent years trying to take control of Harlem's numbers racket. On the surface, the numbers game looked small. Every day people bet spare change coins, loose bills, whatever they could afford. But taken together, those bets added up fast. By the early 1950s, billions of dollars were being wagered each year across Harlem and New York, making control of the numbers one of the most powerful positions in the city's underground economy. Whoever controlled that flow of money didn't just earn a cut, they controlled influence, protection, and loyalty. The Mafia understood that. Once they owned the numbers, the rest of Harlem would follow. That was the line Bumpy Johnson refused to let them cross. What Bumpy built was something the Italians never truly understood. He didn't rule Harlem through fear alone. He ruled through respect. When families couldn't pay rent, Bumpy stepped in. When black-owned businesses were harassed by police, Bumpy made phone calls and the pressure stopped. When the Italian Mafia tried to move into local operations, Bumpy pushed back hard. The 5 families tested him again and again. They sent those men left in ambulances. They tried to negotiate. Bumpy told them Harlem was not for sale. Then they tried buying politicians, but Bumpy's connections ran deeper. By 1958, the Mafia families were desperate, and desperate men tend to make dangerous decisions. Frank Costello, the most powerful Mafia boss in New York at the time, called a meeting. All 5 families sent representatives. There was only one issue on the table: Bumpy Johnson. They had already tried using force. They had tried using money. We tried politics, Costello said, his voice cold and even. It didn't work. This guy can't be touched. Carlo Gambino struck a match and lit his cigar before asking, so what do you suggest? Costello leaned forward slightly. We have to make him vulnerable. We need to find the one person he completely trusts, and we have to buy him. That was when someone mentioned Big Sam. Samuel Foster, known as Big Sam, had been by Bumpy's side since 1953. He stood 6'4" and weighed over 260 pounds, built of muscle and loyalty. He had taken bullets for Bumpy twice. He was there when Bumpy's mother died. He stood with him through the wars with what remained of Dutch Schultz's old crew, through police raids, through everything. If anyone was close enough to kill Bumpy Johnson, it was Big Sam. The family sent Tony, their information man, to make the approach. Tony was a professional. He didn't break legs or crack skulls. He found weaknesses, and every man has one. On August 20th, 1958, 3 weeks before the assassination attempt, Big Sam was leaving his apartment on 132nd Street when a black Cadillac rolled to a stop. The window slid down. Tony Marinette sat in the back seat, smiling like an insurance salesman. Sam, right? Big Sam? I've heard a lot about you. Sam's hand drifted toward his waistband, where his .45 was tucked. Who's asking? Tony nodded toward the empty seat. A friend, or someone who wants to make you a very rich man. 5 minutes. Just hear me out. Sam should have walked away right then. But curiosity can be dangerous. He got in. Tony didn't waste time. You're a smart guy, Sam. You know how this works. You're loyal to Bumpy, and that's admirable. But loyalty doesn't pay hospital bills for your daughter. Sam's jaw tightened. His youngest child, Keisha, had been fighting tuberculosis for 6 months. The treatment was expensive. The hospital bills kept piling up. Sam had gone to Bumpy Johnson for help, and Bumpy had given him $2,000, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Tony opened a briefcase. Inside were neat stacks of $100 bills. $50,000. That's what we're offering. Enough to cover every medical bill. Enough to move your family somewhere safe and clean, where your daughter can breathe. Sam asked the question anyway, even though he already knew the answer. What do you want me to do? Tony didn't hesitate. One bullet, one moment. You walk into Lenox Lounge on September 12th. Bumpy will be there, same as every Friday night. You wait until he's distracted. One shot to the back of the neck, clean, quick. Then you disappear. We've got a car waiting. New identities for your whole family. Tomorrow you're in Miami. Next week you're someone else. Sam stared at the money. $50,000. His daughter's life. His family's future, all for a single pull of the trigger. And if I say no? Sam asked quietly. Tony's smile faded. Then your daughter dies slowly in a charity hospital. And you keep working for Bumpy, watching your back every day, knowing that one day a bullet with your name on it is coming. Because that's how this life ends, Sam. You know it. I know it. The only question is whether you die poor or rich. Sam stepped out of the car without saying a word. But the briefcase stayed behind, left on the seat. The stacks of cash still visible, waiting. Sam wasn't a traitor by nature. He was a bodyguard, a soldier, a man built on loyalty. For 5 years, his world had been simple. Stand next to Bumpy Johnson, take the risks, take the bullets, and never ask questions. Bumpy wasn't just his boss. He was the man who trusted him with his life, the man who treated him like family. Walking away from that wasn't just betrayal, it felt like tearing out a part of himself. But every night, when Sam went home, there was another reality waiting for him. A small apartment, stacked medical bills, and a daughter who struggled to breathe. Sam could face guns. He could face police raids. He could face death. What he couldn't face was watching his child slowly fade away while he stood by, powerless. That was the trap Tony had set. Not money, not fear, a choice. One man, one bullet, one moment. On one side stood Bumpy Johnson, trust, loyalty, a code Sam had lived by his entire adult life. On the other stood his daughter, her hospital bed, her labored breathing, and a future that depended on him making the impossible choice. And that was the question tightening around Sam's chest every waking moment. Would he choose Bumpy? Or would he choose his child? But what Sam didn't know, what would turn this choice into something far more dangerous, was that Bumpy Johnson already knew everything. When Sam took the money, it didn't feel like a win. The briefcase was heavier than he expected, not because of the cash, but because of what it represented. He didn't count it. He didn't smile. He just closed the lid and carried it out, knowing there was no clean way back anymore. Every step felt slower. Every sound felt louder. The money that was supposed to solve everything only made the weight on his chest worse. At home, Sam hid the cash where no one could see it, but he couldn't hide it from himself. Every time he looked at his daughter, the money felt necessary. Every time he thought about Bumpy, it felt wrong. The days that followed were torture. Sam stood next to Bumpy like he always had, laughed when he was supposed to, stayed alert when things got tense, but inside, everything had changed. Each handshake felt longer. Each conversation felt heavier. The closer September 12th got, the harder it became to breathe. Sam told himself he wasn't choosing money. He was choosing time. Time for his daughter to live. Time for his family to escape this life. But deep down, he knew the truth. Once the trigger was pulled, there would be no way to undo it. And that was the decision Sam had to live with every waking moment until the night came when he would finally have to choose. What Big Sam didn't know, and what Tony didn't know, was that before Sam ever stepped into that Cadillac, Bumpy Johnson already knew about the approach. Bumpy didn't become the king of Harlem by trusting everyone. He became king by understanding people, by knowing that everyone has a price, everyone has a weakness, and everyone can be bought or pressured if you know where to look. Bumpy had eyes everywhere. Bartenders, shoeshine boys, taxi drivers, janitors, people no one noticed, people the Italian Mafia never thought to watch. And one of those people was a parking attendant named Jerome. Jerome saw Tony Marone's Cadillac pull up outside Sam's building. He watched Sam get inside. He wrote down the license plate. 2 hours later, Jerome was standing in Bumpy's office above the Smalls Paradise Jazz Club. Tony Marone's car, Jerome said, sliding a piece of paper across the desk. Parked outside Big Sam's place this morning. Sam got in, stayed about 5 minutes, then walked away. Bumpy studied the paper, then looked up at Jerome. You sure it was Marone? Jerome nodded. Positive. I've seen him before. He collects money from Italian restaurants on the east side. Bumpy said nothing for a long moment. Then he opened his desk drawer, took out $500, and handed it to Jerome. You didn't see anything, Bumpy said. You weren't there. You understand?
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Johnson, Jerome replied. After Jerome left, Bumpy sat alone in his office for 2 full hours thinking. Sam had been at his side for 5 years. Good years, loyal years. They had been through fights together, through close calls, through moments where trust meant survival. Bumpy had trusted Sam with his life. And now the Italians were reaching him. If there was one thing Bumpy understood about desperate men, it was this. Desperation leads to bad choices. Bumpy could have ended it right then. One phone call, and Sam would disappear into the East River. That was what most men in Bumpy's position would do. Remove the threat. Move on. But Bumpy Johnson wasn't most men. He kept thinking about who Sam had been, not just who he might become. Over the next 3 weeks, Bumpy watched him closely. He noticed Sam's hands shaking at times. He saw the tension in his eyes, the weight he was carrying. This wasn't a traitor celebrating a payoff. This was a man trapped between loyalty and survival. And part of Bumpy still believed that loyalty might win. That belief mattered, because in the end, Bumpy made his decision. He wasn't going to kill Sam. He was going to teach him a lesson, one that would test where Sam's loyalty truly stood. Bumpy went to a gunsmith in Brooklyn, a man named Victor, who had been modifying weapons for him for over 15 years. He didn't waste time. I need you to do something for me, Bumpy said. I need a gun that doesn't work.
I'm here to
Victor
pick up
frowned.
a special order.
You want a broken gun? No, Bumpy replied. I want a gun that looks perfect, feels perfect, but when the trigger is pulled, nothing happens. No round, no firing pin, just a click. Victor paused. You want a dummy gun? A convincing one, Bumpy said. Can you do it? Victor could. 3 days later, he delivered a modified .38 Special, identical to Sam's service weapon. Same weight, same balance, same feel, completely dead. The next step was timing. Bumpy needed to switch Sam's real gun with the fake without Sam ever noticing. That meant getting into Sam's apartment while he was gone. On September 8th, 4 days before the hit, Bumpy sent Sam on an errand across town. "I need you to pick up an envelope from a contact in the Bronx," Bumpy told him. "It's important. Don't come back without it." The job would keep Sam busy for at least 3 hours, more than enough time. While Sam was away, Bumpy and his most trusted associate, Illinois Gordon, entered Sam's apartment. They found the gun exactly where Bumpy knew it would be, inside a shoebox under the bed. They swapped it with Victor's gun and left without disturbing a thing. Sam would never know the difference. Later that night, Sam checked his gun. That's what he always did. Habit, routine, muscle memory. He took the revolver from its place, felt the weight in his hand. It felt right, familiar. He opened the cylinder. Clean. No problems. He closed it, thumbed the hammer back, then eased it down again. Everything sounded normal. Everything felt normal. Sam stared at it for a moment longer than usual. Then he slid it back where it belonged. He didn't know the firing pin had been altered. He didn't know the gun was already dead. All Sam knew was that his hand felt steady, and that made the decision feel final. Now, Bumpy had to wait. He had to let Sam act. If Bumpy confronted him before the attempt, Sam could deny everything. The Italians would simply find another man. The cycle would continue. No, Bumpy needed Sam to pull the trigger. He needed Sam to commit. And in that moment of absolute betrayal, Bumpy would reveal the truth, not just to Sam, but to everyone in the room, to all of Harlem, and to the 5 families watching from a distance. The message would be simple and unmistakable. You don't kill Bumpy Johnson, because Bumpy Johnson is always 3 steps ahead. September 12th, 1958, 11:47 p.m., Lenox Lounge. That night, the club was packed. 300 people, musicians, hustlers, businessmen, politicians. A Friday night in Harlem meant jazz, cognac, and conversations that shaped the future of the neighborhood. Bumpy sat at his usual table with 2 city councilmen discussing a new housing project in Sugar Hill. He wore a perfectly tailored gray suit. His fedora rested on the table beside an untouched glass of Hennessy. Big Sam arrived at 11:30. He'd been drinking, not drunk, just enough to steady his nerves. Inside his jacket was the .38 Special he'd carried for 5 years, the gun he believed would make him $50,000 richer. Sam stood near the bar, watching, waiting. Bumpy's back was turned. He was focused on the conversation. He looked exposed, vulnerable. At 11:47, Sam made his move. He cut through the crowd, his hand inside his jacket, wrapped tight around the pistol. No one noticed. No one questioned it. Sam was always close to Bumpy. He was the bodyguard. His presence was normal, expected. He stopped behind Bumpy's chair. 6 feet, 4, 2. He drew the gun. The bartender saw it first. His eyes went wide, but before a warning could leave his mouth, Sam aimed at the back of Bumpy's head and pulled the trigger. Click. The sound of the firing pin hitting nothing echoed through a room that instantly went silent. The jazz band stopped mid-note. Conversations died in place. 300 people turned to see Big Sam standing there, his hand shaking around a useless gun, and Bumpy Johnson still seated, calm, unmoved. Bumpy lifted his glass and took a slow sip of cognac. Then he set it down and turned in his chair. He looked at Sam, really looked at him. What Sam saw in Bumpy's eyes was worse than anger. It was disappointment. "I trusted you," Bumpy said quietly. Those words hit Sam harder than any bullet ever could, because in that moment, Sam understood. Bumpy had known. He knew about Tony Marinette, the $50,000, the plan, all of it. And instead of killing Sam, instead of sending him to the East River, Bumpy had let him walk into this room and pull the trigger. He let Sam expose himself in front of 300 witnesses, let him destroy his own name, his own honor. Sam's gun slipped from his hand and hit the floor. His legs gave out. He dropped to his knees. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "God help me. I'm sorry. My daughter." "I know about your daughter," Bumpy cut in. His voice stayed low, but it carried through the silence. "I've known for 6 months. You think I don't take care of my own?" Bumpy reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, placing it on the table. Every one of Kesha's medical bills had been paid that morning. Inside was also a $5,000 check for Sam's family, for whatever they needed next. Tears filled Sam's eyes. "Then why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Bumpy didn't answer right away. When he did, his words were measured. "Because I needed to know," he said. "I needed to know whether you'd choose money over loyalty, whether you'd choose their $50,000 over what we had." He paused. "Now I know." Bumpy stood up. He wasn't a tall man, but in that moment he seemed towering. "Tonight, you leave Harlem," he said. "You take your family and you disappear. I don't care where you go. But if I ever see you again, if I ever hear your name, there won't be a second chance. Do you understand?" Sam nodded, tears running freely. "And Sam," Bumpy added, his voice dropping even lower,
"I am sorry.
"when the Italians ask what happened here tonight, you tell them exactly what you saw. You tell them Bumpy Johnson knew. You tell them he always knew. You tell them loyalty in Harlem isn't for sale. And you tell them if they ever try this again, I won't be this merciful." Sam rose to his feet on shaking legs, picked up the useless gun, and walked out of Lenox Lounge. He left New York that night and never came back. The last anyone heard, he was working construction in Detroit, a broken man carrying the weight of betrayal for the rest of his life. After Sam disappeared, Bumpy Johnson turned back to the room. 300 people stared at him in silence. They had just witnessed something unheard of. A man had tried to kill Bumpy Johnson, and Bumpy had turned the attempt into a lesson. "Let me be clear," Bumpy said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "The Italians think they can buy us. They think they can divide us." He paused, letting the words sink in. "They think they can take Harlem because we're poor, because we're black, because we don't matter." Bumpy lifted his glass of cognac. "They're wrong. Harlem is not for sale. It never was, and it never will be. Anyone who thinks they can walk into my neighborhood and buy my people will learn the same lesson Big Sam just learned." He raised his glass higher. "We're not the ones who need protection. They are." He finished simply. "To Harlem and to loyalty, because loyalty can't be bought." 300 glasses rose in response. "To Harlem." The jazz band started playing again. Conversations picked up. Within minutes, the night seemed normal again, except that nothing was the same. Word of what happened spread through New York's underworld like wildfire. By morning, every hustler from Boston to Baltimore had heard the story. Bumpy Johnson had known about the hit 3 weeks in advance. He let it happen. He forced a traitor to expose himself in front of 300 witnesses, and he did it without spilling a single drop of blood. The 5 families called an emergency meeting the next day. Frank Costello was furious not at Bumpy, but at Tony Marinette for failing. But Carlo Gambino saw something else. "We can't beat this man," Gambino said quietly. "We've tried everything. Violence didn't work. Money didn't work. Turning his people didn't work. Every time we move against him, he's already ahead of us." Costello pressed him. "So what do we do?" Gambino lit his cigar and answered without hesitation. "We leave Harlem alone. We focus on Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx. Harlem belongs to Bumpy Johnson. Trying to take it will only cost us more money and more men. It was the first time the five families backed down from a territorial fight, but they had no other choice. That night at Lenox Lounge, Bumpy Johnson proved something important. He wasn't just a gangster. He was a strategist, a chess player who always thought several moves ahead. And you don't sit down at a chessboard with a grandmaster unless you're prepared to lose. The story of Big Sam's betrayal became legend in Harlem. It was told and retold for decades, passed down from one generation to the next, not just as a story, but as a lesson about loyalty, about staying 3 steps ahead, about what real power actually looks like. Word spread fast through the underworld. By the next morning, every hustler from Boston to Baltimore knew exactly what had happened. The five families called an emergency meeting. That day, Carlo Gambino said something no one expected. "We leave Harlem alone. We can't beat this man." It was the first time the Italian Mafia backed down from a territorial fight without firing a single shot. Bumpy Johnson lived another 10 years after that night. He died in 1968, not from a bullet, but from a heart attack. Ironically, it happened at Lenox Lounge, the same place where he faced Big Sam. But here's the point. That night, Bumpy proved something most people miss. The most dangerous weapon isn't a gun. It's knowing what's coming before your enemy does. It's turning their plan into your victory. It's playing chess while they're still learning checkers. Big Sam took $50,000 from the Mafia. He left New York with nothing but shame. And Bumpy? He went back to his table in the corner, finished his glass of cognac, and kept ruling Harlem. Now, if this story got your adrenaline going, hit the like button, it really helps. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We post stories about Bumpy Johnson all the time. And trust me, the next one is even crazier. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have handled it differently? Would you have let Sam walk away? And make sure you turn on notifications, because next week we're telling the story of how Bumpy Johnson walked into Lucky Luciano's office unarmed and walked out with the deal of a lifetime. You don't want to miss that. And remember, in Harlem, respect isn't given, it's earned. And Bumpy Johnson earned every inch of it.